Watch this moment. What's going on here? Is it just sloppy editing, or are they intentionally breaking the rules? And why? We will be spoiling the following movies, and graphic content lies ahead. Editing is a fantastic way to manipulate time and space. It is one of the defining characteristics of cinema, in fact. We can jump between the past, present, or future on a plot level. But within a scene, time only moves forward, usually. When this rule is broken, it's called a repeat cut. When we jump back in time to repeat an action or bit of dialogue.
Beans. Beans. Beans.
In most cases, each repeated cut is from a different shot size or camera angle. But sometimes it can just be the exact same shot again. The repeat cut is the opposite of a jump cut, where we jump forward in time. To truly lose ourselves in another world, we must forget that we're watching a movie. And one very important technique to create this illusion is something called continuity editing, where time and space remain consistent from shot to shot. In other words, the editing should be invisible. But both jump cuts and repeat cuts can break that immersive experience for the audience. With jump cuts, at least we can experience something like it in our own lives. When we nod off in a car and we're suddenly much further down the road, for example. But a repeat cut is completely impossible in real life. And sometimes that's exactly the point. In Twin Peaks: The Return, David Lynch uses many jump and repeat cuts to establish a break between our world and a world beyond. Another similar technique is the match-on action cut, where one action is split into multiple shots. But the difference is that there is no perceptible jump back in time. In some cases, there may be a couple of frames that overlap, but to the naked eye, the action is fluid and linear. So the question becomes, what's the purpose of a repeat cut? Well, there are a few, actually. By far, the most common use is to enhance spectacle. Think of a big action movie explosion. We can repeat the blast from different angles to get the most out of this spectacular moment. However, when any technique gets overdone, it becomes a trope. And then, once it gets parodied, no one wants to use it. But you shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Repeat cuts can still be used for creative visual storytelling. Let's say you want to get inside a character's head. A repeat cut can be just the thing. Direct access to their mental state without clunky dialogue or voiceover. Throughout Natural Born Killers, we cut in and out of Mickey's head. This is usually differentiated using color for an objective view and black and white for how Mickey sees the world. In this early scene, his imagination gives the waitress's line an entirely different perspective.
Well, key lime's great, but it's an acquired taste.
Well, I ain't had key lime pie in 10 years.
Peeking into a character's mind can also be romantic. In Punch Drunk Love, after Barry anxiously awaits Lena's arrival, her appearance prompts a repeat cut. Time stops and repeats for Barry, as if his heart takes a jump at the sight of her. In 25th Hour, Monty's father paints a picture of his son's future.
You forget your old life. You can't come back. You can't call, you can't write. You never look back. You make a new life for yourself, and you live it. You hear me? You live your life the way it should have been.
And his imaginary reunion with Naturel repeats in his head. You might consider these future memories, but because they haven't happened yet, the repeats give us variations of what could happen. In American Beauty, these breaks from reality signal our transition into Lester's fantasy world. For this moment, the action is repeated with extra emphasis using higher frame rates.
Oh, is that root beer?
I shot this in 3 speeds. The hand moves in 3 speeds. That was 24. This, I think, is 48. And then I think this is even slower. I'm not sure. It's continuous movement of the hand, this jump cutting back. When he goes into this fantasy world, we work very hard on trying to get the right level of the fantasies so that you weren't absolutely certain he was going into fantasy, both musically and filmically as well.
Repeat cuts are also great for punctuating a moment. At the end of Black Klansman, Detective Stallworth finally reveals his identity, and his victory is celebrated twice.
'Cause that coon, gator bait spade, spook Sambo, spear chucking jungle bunny, Mississippi wind chime, detective is Ron Stallworth, you racist, peckerwood, redneck, inchworm, motherfucker. Oh! I'll be here all week.
In The Lion King, little Simba's presentation to the kingdom is enhanced with a zoom, a musical crescendo, and 2 quick repeat cuts for a truly royal introduction. For Death Proof, Quentin Tarantino replays a fatal car crash from different perspectives, one for each of the victims. By doing so, it enhances the brutality of their deaths and solidifies stuntman Mike's cruelty. And when he is defeated in the end, the revenge is that much more satisfying. Another deeper way to use repeat cuts is to augment a movie's theme. This goes all the way back to the Russians a century ago with the birth of Soviet montage, where they used radical editing to promote radical ideas. In October, director Sergei Eisenstein presents a rather evocative and tragic scene. A girl is gunned down on a bridge as it rises. Her hair slowly drops over the edge, distilling the tragedy of these true events and burning the image in our minds. Decades later, director Michelangelo Antonioni made another political statement with Zabriskie Point. The film is an exploration of the late 60s social revolution, and in the finale, the repeat cuts are used thematically. This house represents everything the lead characters stand against. And so, as we watch its destruction over and over, shot with 17 different cameras, the visual metaphor is made stronger by this editing technique. In a much more personal and emotional example, we can look at Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. As you may recall, it is focused on memory, specifically the act of erasing memories. In the final shots of the film, the same action is repeated as the scene fades to white over somber music, hitting on the theme one last time that memories fade for better or worse. And finally, the repeat cut can be used for pure comedy. In this iconic scene, the Monty Python crew take repeated action to the extreme. Just one of the many meta tricks that play with the cinematic form itself. Or in this chaotic encounter from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, a single kick lands in 3 separate shots. The comedic effect is augmented by a secondary technique, the axial cut. Edits the jump between different shot sizes from the same angle. In this case, each repeated cut narrows through medium, close-up, and extreme close-up. As you're editing, remember that repeat cuts can be much more than a laughable trope. They can be a unique perspective into a character's heart and dreams. They can punctuate a moment, support a theme, or generate a bit of comedy. Consider repeat cuts in your next project in the script, shot list, or storyboard, all part of StudioBinder's suite of pre-production applications. Before we start repeating ourselves, it's time to sign off. Before we start repeating ourselves,